Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. This is one of the sole timely episodes that I'm recording in the month of July. As you're listening to this, I am on a plane to Japan, but don't worry because we have a little bit of news to cover, and then in the second half of the show, I will be joined by Game Informer's Kyle Hilliard as we give our reviews of two new Switch-exclusive releases. But for now, it's just me talking about the latest news in the world of Nintendo. First off, I've been mentioning that I have a store over on teepublic.com. That store is still around. I've been getting great feedback from the community. I've been, delighted that people are actually wanting to buy merchandise with this podcast. I thought I was putting it up and just nobody would put anything on. I was like, who would want to rock this shirt that has my podcast logo on it? Turns out a few people do. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for wanting to rep the podcast out in real life. That store is still around. You can get t-shirts, coffee mugs, hoodies, bags, I think tote bags, with a few different designs that I've created. Unfortunately, the most popular design, which was the logo of this very All Things Nintendo podcast, I received an email that our friends over at Nintendo of America have filed a DMCA against the logo because it has the word Nintendo in it. So unfortunately, that design had to be taken down. And just to be safe, I'm thinking maybe I should start beeping out the name of the company anytime I mention it in this podcast. Regardless, if you want any All Things Nintendo merchandise, like the bar logo that you see without any words, an abbreviated ATN logo, or the controller outline images that I've created, those are all still available on teepublic.com. Just look for the link in the episode description. And if you happened to order the All Things Nintendo logo and it actually shipped, as mine did, I actually got a coffee mug with the logo on it before they took it down. It seems like a few of you did as well. And maybe I also heard from a couple of you that you were getting errors when you tried to order that specific design. But if you did get it, congratulations, you have a collector's item, because I don't think they're going to be sold anymore. But we're figuring out ways to get some more designs up there, if none of them up there tickle your fancy. But yeah, just a little housekeeping at the top here. But let's run down the news that has hit over the last week and change. Last week, Nintendo teased some kind of horror experience with the name Emio, E-M-I-O. And the teaser had people speculating what kind of horror game was Nintendo going to put out. I mean, they're not exactly known as the masters of horror, but we now know what it is. It's called Emio the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club. And that name may sound familiar. It was originally for the Famicom Disk System, the Famicom Detective Club games. There were two of them. They were, I believe, only in Japan, and they were brought to the US in 2021 through Switch remakes. In this one in particular, you play a detective working to solve a crime of a murdered student with clues that point it to being linked to an urban legend killer. And it's described as an interactive drama, and the trailer starts with, quote, "This video contains scenes that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised." So I actually got kind of excited there because that means it's going to be a little bit different from a standard Nintendo game trailer. But the trailer itself didn't really have a whole lot of footage in general. It was mostly producer Yoshio Sakamoto, who I know is the producer of the Metroid series. The trailer was just him talking about his philosophy with a few interspliced scenes from the game. And I guess there's one where it appears to show a dead body. But outside of that, it wasn't exactly super disturbing. But yeah, Yoshio Sakamoto, he's been with the Metroid series since the very first game on NES. He was a designer of that one, and then eventually he transferred to being the producer of the series. And his most recent work on the franchise was the producer of Metroid Dread. So he's been around. I was part of a group interview with him for Metroid Dread when that was first announced. And he also worked on the original Famicom Detective Club games when they came out on the Famicom Disk System, and then he worked on the remakes as well. So we have the double pack that is called the 2-Case Collection. It's currently on Switch for $60, but this new one, Emio, it comes to Switch on August 29th. And it means we just have another game to look forward to. Like, it's wild that, like, looking at the start of this year, it was like, oh, maybe there's not going to be a whole lot of games coming out for Switch the second half of this year as they kind of ramp up to Switch 2 or whatever they end up calling it. And now it's like almost too much. They've gone hard in the paint with this holiday release calendar. But yeah, August 29th is when you can look forward to Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. We also have 3 new Nintendo Switch Online games in the Game Boy Advance library, and all 3 of these games were previously exclusive to Japan, and they're finally in the US now. It's Densetsu no Starfy 1, Densetsu no Starfy 2, and Densetsu no Starfy 3, all available right now. I've never played these games. Obviously, I've never lived in Japan, but they do look like fun little action platformers with absolutely gorgeous pixel art aesthetic. I mean, the Game Boy Advance was always so good about that. And they originally came out in 2002, 2003, and 2004, respectively. But now they're finally outside of Japan for the first time, 2+ decades later. And these were originally developed by Tosei, who has worked on the Game & Watch Gallery games for Nintendo and a bunch of Dragon Ball games. They also recently worked on the Scarlet Nexus, that game with Bandai Namco. And yeah, I'm looking forward to checking these out. I need to dive deeper into the Game Boy Advance library. Like, I had kind of limited experience with the Game Boy Advance, and there are so many games on there that people swear by, and I've heard good things about these 3 as well, and obviously I've never played them before, so something I'm looking forward to. They are all available now on Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack in the Game Boy Advance library, and from what I understand, Densetsu is Japanese for legend, so it's like Legend of Starfy 1, 2, and 3. So interesting looking games there. Moving on to Mortal Kombat 1, I've said a million times on this show, it's not the best way to play it is on Switch. I had a good time playing it on PS5. Everything I've seen about the Switch version says it's not really in the same league as the PS5 and Xbox Series X versions. But if you are playing it, you'll have a new DLC character to play very soon. Takeda Takashi, who had debuted in Mortal Kombat X, arrives on July 23rd. And it's interesting because when Mortal Kombat X came out, I actually really liked him. He's Kenshi's son. He trained with Hanzo Hasashi, and Takeda has these cool whips that let him pull off like really flashy moves and has like good range. I don't know why people didn't really gravitate towards him, but he was one of my favorite characters in MKX, and in this version, he still has his whips, but he has explosive shurikens as well, which sounds pretty neat. He is arriving on Mortal Kombat 1 on July 23rd. We've already gotten all kinds of other characters. We've gotten Peacemaker from the DC show and John Cena's likeness. We've had Homelander from The Boys, which, by the way, that season finale that hit this week, man, talk about intense. That was, I mean, I was kind of high and low on this season of The Boys, if you're watching that show on Amazon Prime. But the ending of this season was phenomenal. So it made me want to go play Homelander in Mortal Kombat 1. Who else is in this? Omni-Man from Invincible, another show that I absolutely love. So it's been a cool run of characters, and I'm glad that we're getting back to like actual Mortal Kombat characters with Takeda when he comes out next week on July 23rd. You know that I love me some Sonic stuff, so I saw this quote from Takashi Iizuka, who's Sonic Team's creative officer. He's been the head of Sonic Team for a while now, so I have to talk about it. It was an interview with Good Vibe Games that I actually found over on NintendoLife.com. And Iizuka said he would like to work on a Sonic the Hedgehog RPG before he retires from Sega. And he said there's no concrete plans at this point, but it's been one of his dreams, and he wants to make it happen before he calls it quits, which I think he's still got a little bit of time left. He's obviously a very busy man. Every time I've ever talked to him, it's like he's got a million plates that he's spinning. However, they're really ramping up the output over on Sonic Team. Like, it's been more than one game per year for a while now. And the only time that Sega has tried to do a Sonic RPG, they actually had BioWare, the studio behind Mass Effect and Dragon Age, um, create the game, and it was Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, and it came out on the DS back in 2008. And I actually checked that out of the Game Informer vault and thinking like, oh, this is gonna be a slam dunk. I love Sonic, I love BioWare, like this is like tailor made for me, and I didn't really like it. I didn't like the gameplay, which is also wild because I love turn-based RPGs, but just something about the gameplay just did so little for me. The art style was great. The story seemed like it was going in a cool direction. And I wasn't alone because it got super divisive review scores. It has a 74 on Metacritic. We saw some scores as high as, like, I think it was One Up that gave it an A. Game Informer gave it an 8.5, but then there were several that gave it like 6 or even lower. And like I said, when I checked it out when I had the 3DS, and it plays DS games, and it just didn't do it for me. I'd like to try it again at some point, but I would have to figure out where my 3DS is at this point. I just want Sonic Team to take another crack at, or just somebody, some developer. It doesn't matter if it's Sonic Team. I'd like Sonic Team to be involved, especially now that they're trying to develop a more cohesive lore with all the different games coming together. So it's not as kind of Wild West as it once was. But I want them to have like more character driven stories and deeper explorations of who these characters are, and over the course of a very long story. And it's hard to really get too much of that in the fast-paced Sonic mainline games, even though they did kind of start veering that direction with the Sonic Frontiers. But most of the Sonic mainline games are just kind of boiled down to gotta go fast, and they do that with the story as well. And we'll get some cutscenes. I'm glad that we're getting much better writing in Frontiers than we got with Sonic Forces, where that infamous line of Knuckles being like, "This is war. It's all bad," and it's it's honestly it was kind of laughable, the dialogue in Sonic Forces. But Sonic Frontiers made huge strides in the storytelling department, even if a lot of it was heavy-handed, like references back to older Sonic games. At one point, even just cutting to a screenshot of Sonic 3, which I don't know if I love or hate, but it's just interesting how they relied so heavily on that nostalgia angle, which I'm fine with. I think Sonic should kind of have a nostalgic aspect to it. It's in some way, even as it tried an entirely new formula with Frontiers. But back to this quote, the thing that I keep coming back to is that Sega has so many great RPG studios under its umbrella right now. It would be so cool to see Sonic Team and Iizuka collaborate with like the team behind Persona / Metaphor, or like the Like a Dragon team. Like that would be so cool to have an RPG like that, like a modern RPG. Doesn't seem like we're really getting too many dedicated handheld devices, so it feels like the visuals would have to be of a higher caliber than we had with BioWare's game that came out in 2008. But the unfortunate thing here is, while I'm getting excited about it, it seems like anything, because of the way Iizuka had framed this in that quote from Good Vibes Gaming, anything would be at least several years away, and at most, more than a decade away, because there's just been so many games coming out of Sonic Team and Sega for this franchise, and RPGs are notorious for how long they take to develop. And he specifically mentioned there are no concrete plans, so that means if they made plans today, it would probably be years from active development. So unfortunate there. But I do like the idea, and I do like that he wants to do it, and he's actually speaking out. I would love to do that. So when I invite Kyle Hilliard on the show in the next segment, we're going to be talking about Nintendo World Championships, NES Edition, and then the newest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game that just came to Switch. And there's already another one of the TMNT games in the chamber. I have talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants Unleashed on the show before. It just as a reminder, it's the one that takes place after the events of the recent Mutant Mayhem movie. And it is a 3D action and platforming game with the same art style as the movie. And each character you can play as the four brothers. They have their own unique skill tree. They're voiced by the movie's voice cast. There's new lines that they recorded. It's looking pretty good, actually. I always worry about like licensed games, and we've seen good TMNT games, as we're going to talk about in the next segment. And I've talked about how bad a TMNT game has been this year. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be closer to the good side of the spectrum. But we'll have to wait and see. It's a kind of a lesser known developer, Outright Games, who works on a lot of licensed properties. This is kind of seems like maybe one of their bigger opportunities that they'll have to like kind of make a splash in the mainstream. And it comes out October 18th. So I definitely have that circled on my calendar now. Looking forward to checking it out, although it is going to be a very busy holiday release schedule. So, yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants Unleashed is what it's called. And it comes out October 18th on Switch and several other platforms. And then finally, before we break, I just wanted to remind everyone that the best way to interact with the All Things Nintendo podcast is through the free Patreon page. You can submit feedback, listener questions, get clued into the latest news before anyone else. And as I've hinted, I'm planning on introducing paid tiers in the somewhat near future. It's also, a really great group of folks over there. I love interacting with all the people over on the Patreon page. So if you want to join the cause, go and head over to Patreon and join the currently completely free All Things Nintendo page. And then a reminder, if you prefer video versions of podcasts, you can follow me on YouTube, where I'm currently pushing to hit 500 subscribers on my new channel, publishing clips as well as the full video versions of every podcast over there. We are going to take a quick break, and when I return, I'm going to be joined by Kyle Hilliard to discuss 2 new Switch exclusive releases. We will be right back. It's been a bit of a slow month as far as big name Nintendo releases, but once again, we have 2 games hitting the same week, and we have the 2 people who are covering them for Game Informer on the same episode of All Things Nintendo. Joining me now is the man who reviewed Nintendo World Championship NES Edition for Game Informer, Kyle Hilliard. Kyle, how are you doing?
Good. Great. Wonderful.
Great. Oh, wow. So you must have really loved Nintendo World Championship.
Oh, it was that part. That was fine. It's okay. It's a fine game.
So yeah, last time we did this, what were the games? It was Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble. I don't know. They've done so. Yeah, Banana Rumble. That was the most recent one. Because they did Banana Blitz and Banana Mania, and all the banana things are just blending together. But that's not what we're talking about today, Kyle. We are talking about 2 new games exclusive to the Nintendo Switch that are hitting this week, or that did hit this week. And you reviewed one, I reviewed the other. It's a bit of deja vu going on in this episode. So let's start with yours. Nintendo World Championship NES Edition. This was kind of like one of those games that we were looking at Nintendo's second half of 2024, and we were like, we don't know anything that's coming out after Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, and there wasn't a Nintendo Direct announced or anything. And then Nintendo just shadow dropped a trailer and was like, we not in a Nintendo Direct. It was just like, oh yeah, by the way, here's this thing that's coming out in July. And we all thought it looked pretty cool, I think. I don't know, maybe your opinion differed, but I thought it looked really cool. I was like, oh, this is like kind of like NES remix vibes if you played that on Wii U or 3DS. And it's finally out. So I guess what were our misconceptions about this, and what did we get on, like, hit on the head with, like, comparing it to NES remix?
Right. Gosh. I mean, there wasn't their trailers for the game like really weren't shy about what it is, right? It's not like I played it and I was like, oh, this is different from what I expected. That certainly wasn't the case. I mean, it's got, I believe, 13 like Nintendo developed and published games on it. And then they created, like, I don't know, anywhere from like 10 to 25 speedrun challenges for each of those games. And that amounts to like grabbing the first mushroom as quickly as possible in 1-1 in Mario, to like the bigger later challenges are like, if you do all the Zelda challenges, the final Zelda challenge is like complete a dungeon as quickly as possible,
Mm-hmm.
The Mario one is interesting because the Mario one is actually like beat the whole game using warp pipes. And it's interesting. I I like the game. It's cool. It actually, I'm not an NES kid, right? My first console was Super Nintendo. NES was something I played at all my friends' house and stuff like that. I'm not super nostalgic for NES in general, and to the point where like going back to them for years has been rough for me. Like
Hmm.
I don't think those games hold up very well generally. Like they're nostalgic, they're undeniably important, but like they just don't play very well. They're very
What
clunky.
what's the best NES game like as far as playing it in 2024 in your opinion?
Probably Mario Brothers 3 or
Yeah,
like Kirby.
Mario 3 is
Those
my answer.
yeah, like those still play pretty well. But like to go back to the original Zelda is tough. You know, it's very clunky and hard to control and challenging in ways that aren't fair. But what this game does with these like high speed challenges, whether intentionally or not, like you play the games for exactly as long as they're fun. Because like these challenges, like almost all of them are like seconds long, right? There's maybe some of the later challenges you're playing for like up to 3 to 5 minutes, but like truly, it's like that you play these games as exactly as long as they're fun. You get out of there before you hit the point of you're like, oh, that sucks, or that's not fair. You know?
But wait a sec, Kyle. You just said one of them is beating the entire Super Mario Brothers, so you must just be admitting that that entire game is fun. Checkmate.
I mean like genuinely, I didn't say that challenge was fun, Brian. I said it was a
You
challenge.
said, "Hey, the challenges are just make you play the game for as exactly as long as they are fun."
Exactly. Yeah, right. Not all of them. But yeah, I mean the Mario's hold up pretty well because they were so focused on making it fun to control Mario. I don't think they were really focused on making Link fun to control in Zelda as much as they were like enamored with the fact that they were building a what was ostensibly an open world and designing these smart puzzles and like instilling you with a sense of adventure. I think compared to Mario, they were less concerned with making sure that controlling Link was fun because he's not very fun to control. you but yeah, and it feels kind of like in WarioWare they've always had the Nintendo themed micro games.
Hmm.
It feels a lot like that. Like it feels like they took the Nintendo micro games from WarioWare and sort of fleshed that out into a full game. And then there's like local multiplayer, which is cool. Like it really, I think it functions well as a party game. I played it with my young daughter, who understandably has like like negative nostalgia for Nintendo. Like she looks at these games and they're like, "Ugh, these don't look great, Dad." And she had a good time because it's so quick and there's so much opportunity for practice and understanding what the game is. And like I said, you play it for exactly as long as it's fun. So like for us to just play like 12 seconds of Mario and then move on to a different game is cool and fun. And like I enjoyed that part of it.
Now, talking about your daughter, she is not nostalgic. She thinks that NES games look ugly. Have you shown her SNES? Because I feel maybe it's my nostalgia blinding me, but like I feel like that era has aged so much better. Does she look at that and be like, "Oh, this looks much better. This is a pretty like cool looking retro style."
Yeah, I mean, because she likes Stardew a lot, and
Hmm.
Stardew is kind of feels almost of the Super Nintendo era, and like Yoshi's Island, which is like the go-to to me for like a game that will always forever look good, you know?
Hmm.
And that one, looks cute, and she likes that one. Um, I mean, or likes, it's not like she's playing these. Like, these kids these days don't have time for old games. They're playing new games. They're not wasting their time with that stuff.
I
Um,
guess there is like a whole generation that was raised on like these retro looking games like Minecraft and Stardew Valley, like you pointed out. Like
yeah.
those games pull heavily from like either pixel art or in Minecraft's case voxel art. So like yeah, I guess that makes sense that that
Yeah, they're a little
era.
inclined to not mind like pixel art because pixel art can look really great. I mean, I don't think
Mhm.
that's even a nostalgia thing. I think sometimes pixel art just looks cool as hell.
Yeah. Now you talked about the Nintendo WarioWare challenges. Are you of the same mind as me of like those are always the ones that you look forward to the most?
Yeah, they're the one because they're kind of like known quantities when you start a Wario game where you're kind of like, ooh, I wonder what Nintendo games are gonna make it in here.
Hmm.
Like when you look at the whole of a WarioWare game, like certainly there are there's more creativity in the original games, and there's goofier stuff and funnier stuff, and maybe even better stuff. But yeah, there's undeniably, like, whenever I play a new WarioWare game, it's kind of a sprint to get to those levels and be like, "Ooh, what's gonna make it into this one?" For sure. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't say they're like the best part of any WarioWare game. They're like a required inclusion. I would be upset if they weren't there, but I'd like they're the ones I am excited about, but not necessarily the ones I look back on and be like, those are the best part of the game.
That's fair. So, one of the big fears that I had when this game was announced was that it was going to be too focused on like the esports element, like because there's a whole thing of like, oh, you can get the leaderboard, you can compete against other people's ghosts, and I like these games a lot, right? Like I like some of these games a lot. I should clarify. I'm not particularly great at any of these games. Like, is this something that
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to like just jump into and be like, oh, well, I am just fine at Super Mario Brothers 3 or the original Legend of Zelda. Like, I'm going to have a good time with this and not have to worry too much about like playing at a super high level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these aren't like, you're not meant to be a professional speedrunner. I have never played Ice Climbers for more than like 8 minutes,
Well,
in
that's
my
more than
life.
the exact time that that game is fun.
Right, yeah, so, like, the Ice Climbers challenges are like, "Yeah, get to the next level," or something like that, and it's fun to kinda just have like, the thing I like the most about it, like, Kid Icarus is another example, right, of a game I have not played very much in my life, um, but when I did play through all the Kid Icarus challenges, and it was nice to see more of the game as a result, and understand more mechanics as a result of, like, I played through, like, I don't know, like I don't know if it's like the last level, but like the final challenge in Kid Icarus is like a longer stretch of the game where you're playing through like I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but like you're going through like a maze. And there's actually, you can pull up like a strategy guide in game that kind of tells you where to go. So it was nice to be able to see like deeper parts of Kid Icarus that I'm sure I would have never seen on my own if I just like booted up Kid Icarus on my Switch or whatever. I just would have lost patience at a certain point. But no, you don't have to be like an expert at these games. And the leaderboard stuff I like quite a bit because there's no, and this might be a negative for some folks, but I didn't mind it, is that there's no like live multiplayer, right? Like the mode
Hmm.
that you play locally, there's not an online version of that where you just jump online and are like, speed running NES games against a bunch of other people. The online modes are exclusively for taking on people's ghosts. And the nice thing about that is it lets you take it at your own pace. If you start playing and you're like, well, this round's a bust, I'm not going to win here, you can just restart, you know? And
Hmm.
they have like a silver cup, which puts like very manageable speed run ghosts against you. They put you against crappy people, basically, or maybe not crappy, not people who are crappy at the game, but like their unimpressive times that they registered at some point, right? So um like I beat the silver cup like a few times just to earn some extra coin and stuff like that. But then the gold cup was like very challenging, and I can only get through like a round or two. And there's only like 3 rounds, but so there's like, you will make a lot of progress in this game, and you will see a lot of the game, even if you're not like an NES savant, which I am not for sure.
And what do the coins do again?
The coins they let you unlock more challenges.
Okay.
So like there's literally like a column of the 13 games and then rows next to the games of challenges, and you have to use coin to unlock the challenges. And the thing that's a little annoying to me is like, if you're just playing locally, if you're just playing the single player and you're not messing with the leaderboards and stuff like that, you will kind of hit a wall unless you're like an amazing, like I said, an NES savant. Unless you're like just stellar at these games, you're gonna hit a wall eventually where you like run out of coins and you can't unlock challenges, right? Because you might spend 50 coin to get the fourth Ice Climbers challenge, but then when you get an A on it or a B, you only get like 25 coins as a result. So you don't have enough to buy the next 50 coin challenge. And so like
Okay.
what I ended up doing was like going back to all the challenges that I got B's on and trying to get A's or S's on them. But I mean the best thing you're gonna do is you're gonna play a bunch of challenges single player, you're gonna hit a wall, and then you're gonna do the leaderboard stuff, and you're gonna get a bunch of coins and let you go unlock a bunch of other challenges. But the economy of the game I just felt was kind of a hindrance. Like I
Mm.
really just wanted to see all the challenges, and like it kind of pushes you into different modes. And my reaction was just kind of like, I don't really want to leave this mode. I'm just having fun seeing the challenges for all these games.
But you want more challenges, and in order to get more challenges, you had to go back out to the other mode, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of.
And
I
then the
get what they
coins
were
can
going
also be
for.
used to like unlock your avatars and stuff. And those
Okay.
prices were kind of steep. So like as much as I wanted to have a bunch of different choices for avatars, like I just unlocked a few Zelda ones, and I was kind of like, well, I guess I'll just save my coins for the challenges then.
I get what they were going for because they were probably like, oh, people are going to get locked into these challenges and not explore the other mode. But like, Nintendo's always been kind of the company that lets people just like enjoy the game as they want to, and this feels like
Yeah.
almost counter to that. It reminds me almost of, I don't know if you ran into this as well back. I mean, this is a stretch back over a decade now. Super Mario 3D Land on 3DS,
Hmm?
where like you had to collect, I forget if they were like red coins or gold coins or something, to like there were like 5 of them in the level, and if you didn't collect a certain number of them, you just couldn't go to the next world. And that was like really frustrating when I would get all the way to like the final. I think you couldn't unlock the castle or something like that
That sounds
unless.
familiar. Yeah.
And I was just like, what? I beat the levels. Like, why can't I go into the castle? It's like, oh no, you need to go back and like replay those levels and find the collectibles. And I was just like, I don't like this.
Yeah, if you're not going for 100% and you just want to see the whole game, like yeah, that's kind of obnoxious. Yeah.
Thankfully, I think Nintendo has learned the lesson and they've kind of ditched that design convention
Until now.
until now. Now you need to do it in order to play old games.
Yeah.
Or, you just pay the $20 a year and have the NES library on your Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah.
So
And to be clear, and I double checked with Nintendo on this just to make sure I didn't know if maybe you got all S's across the board or something. Maybe you want to unlock this, but there's no. This is not a way to have like an NES library on your Switch, if that makes sense, right?
so you're
Like
not going to get like a full game unlock if you get
yeah,
S's.
there's like there's no way you do not unlock the full games or anything like that. And even those like the challenge for Mario, for example, that I mentioned, where it's like beat the game using warp pipes, like it will, if you don't use warp pipes, it will literally cut you off and be like, no, you have to use a warp pipe. Like it won't let you complete the level. So it's like
Oh,
honestly, I think that's fine. Like, I think that's cool. I think it's more fun that way. I like how focused this is, but I just wanted to call that out in case anyone was like, oh, NES, like they see it as almost a collection,
yeah.
right? And it's like, oh, I'll have these 13 games on my Switch. That's cool. It's like, nah, that's not what this is. Like, don't go into that expecting that. If you want NES games on your Switch, you got to do Switch Online.
So, just since we've referenced 13 games for a while here, let me just run down the list of games that are
Yeah.
in this that like have challenges. Again, not full games, but they are the ones that have the challenges. Balloon Fight, Donkey Kong, Excite Bike, Ice Climber, Kid Icarus, Kirby's Adventure, Metroid, Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2. I'm assuming that's the US version.
Yeah, both the US and the Japanese one.
Oh, there's Lost Levels in there
Lost
too.
Levels is in there as well.
Okay. Super Mario Brothers 3. Oh, yeah, Lost Levels is the
Lost
next one. The Legend of Zelda, and then Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. What is is there a game that is missing that you think from the NES library that should have been included?
Oh gosh.
I'm bringing up a list of NES
Yeah,
games.
I don't think so. I mean, they hit all the greatest hits. You got Metroid, Zelda, and Mario.
I
And
mean, they hit the
Kirby.
first party. I mean,
Yeah.
think if they had like
I mean,
Mega Man 2 or something in there. That would be cool.
oh, well, yeah. If we're going beyond Nintendo developed and published, yeah, there's a ton that. Yeah, I would love a Contra thrown in there, or any of the Mega Man and stuff like that. Yeah,
Tetris.
absolutely. Tetris, yeah. But I mean, in terms of Nintendo games, yeah, I don't know if there's any that feel like I was like, I wish I'd had some challenges for this. Like, I don't think Dr. Mario really would have fit this mold.
Yeah.
It's just like speed running Dr. Mario would be weird. I don't know what the challenges would be really.
God,
Uh,
that would be a cool way to do DLC for this though, is like a Capcom or a Konami pack.
yeah, I would like that. I would like that a lot. The thing I want the most though is, and it's called Nintendo World Championship, right? Nintendo World Championships NES edition.
I know where
I
you're
would
going.
love a follow-up SNES edition. Like that I would actually be way more excited about that just because I'm an SNES kid. I'm more of a Super Nintendo kid than a Nintendo kid. And honestly, every generation I would love N64 and even GameCube and all that stuff. Although you need to have a really fast loading. So I wonder once you get into the GameCube zone if that makes it a little tricky to kind of load the challenges. I don't know.
Maybe
But,
Switch 2 when it has that that SSD that we're all hoping it
oh,
has.
yeah. But I would like, they announced this and I was like, oh, that's cool. And you said, hey, are you interested in reviewing this? And I was like, yeah, no, I want to check this out. But like Super Nintendo, I would be really very excited for it. Like that would be a more exciting announcement to me. For
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And when they announced NES Remix, I was like, oh, this is really cool. I like this concept. I like NES Remix a lot when it came out, both versions, because there were 2 volumes of it. I was waiting and waiting and waiting for the SNES Remix, and it
Hmm.
never came.
Yeah.
And they've even
I
brought
hope.
NES Remix to the Switch, which is wild to me because that's like one of the more well-liked Wii U games. And it's like, nope, not bringing that over. I guess this is
Yeah,
kind of like why they didn't bring it over.
I guess.
But yeah, if they did
That
it,
game had the wild, I think it was the second one. Is that the second one that had where you could play Super Mario Brothers, and play from right to left? Did you ever play that mode?
oh really?
Yeah,
I think I
it
vaguely remember
hurts
that.
your brain. It is like it's uncomfortable. It's bizarre, but I like that it exists.
Um, yeah, if they did a Nintendo World Championship SNES edition, I would be, frothing at the mouth to play
Yes.
that
I
game
would be
because
very excited for that. Yeah.
God, think about all the games they could do with an SNES version with like I mean they'd be the same franchises to
Yeah,
be
it'd be the
clear, like
Mario World 2, Zelda, Super
Star
Metroid,
Fox.
Star
You could do
Fox.
Star
Yeah, Star
Fox.
Fox would be cool. Oh yeah.
Pilot Wings.
Yeah, although I think Nintendo, well, actually, I was about to say I don't know if they want us to look back at the original Star Fox too closely.
Hey, they
But they
put
did put Star Fox 2 on that at SNES Classic, so
oh man, Donkey Kong Country, A Link to the Past,
all the Donkey Kong
Super
countries.
Mario Kart,
Yep.
Earthbound, Mario RPG. That's Square Enix, but still, it's Nintendo.
Yeah, Earthbound would be fine. They could come up with some weird speed challenges for Earthbound. Yeah, that'd be super fun.
Super Punch Out.
I hope they do that. Oh, Punch Out actually is one that's
Yeah,
probably missing from this collection.
I would
Um,
agree.
that's
F
probably maybe
Zero would be cool.
Punch Out might be the only one that's missing from here. Although some of the sports, did they start doing sports titles on NES? Did they have like a
They
Mario
did.
Tennis and golf and
They
stuff?
they just had baseball and
Baseball? All right.
tennis and stuff like that. Like those were they weren't called like Mario Baseball. I don't think. I
Yeah,
think they
it
were just
would have
called
been fun to
baseball.
have those in there. They could have come up with speedrun challenges for those that I think would have been cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Do you think that this? I mean, because I've talked about this. I mean, last episode in particular, when I did a solo Q&A episode, I brought up the fact that like Mario Odyssey seemed tailor made for DLC,
Mm.
like introducing new kingdoms and stuff like that, and it just never happened. Do you think that this game feels like DLC could just like plug right in, or like does the structure feel like it's kind of restrictive in that manner?
No, it totally could, but it's not like I didn't play the game feeling like um that there wasn't enough here, you know. But if they could, yeah, they could add more games to the list. But it's not. It didn't feel incomplete, if that makes sense, right? That I
Hmm.
could say the same thing about Odyssey. Frankly, it's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
would love new levels, but like this is a complete experience. It doesn't feel like anything's lacking or that it needs additional content necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a full fun game. You gave it a 7.75 out of 10, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I guess what's your recommendation to somebody if they're like, "Hey, I kind of like NES. Should I check this game out?"
I think if you have NES nostalgia, I think it's worth checking out. Just because it sort of converts those old games in. It's almost like a classic movie collection, like just having a bunch of its, good scenes from a bunch of movies, you know. It's like
Hmm.
it's like I don't really want to go back and watch all those old Universal horror monster movies, you know. It's like I don't want to sit down and watch The Mummy and stuff, but if you show me the best scenes
Wait,
from all those movies,
which mummy are we
I'm
talking? Are we
talking
talking
about like
Brendan,
classic, like black and white,
not
like
Brendan Fraser?
not,
'Cause I'll watch
yeah,
that
yeah.
till the cows come home.
But even that, I mean, hey, just show me the best scenes. Like that's a fun way to go back to that movie, you know. So that's, and then also I think if you maybe have like siblings or something that you guys grew up with the NES, like it is a good local party game for fans of like that era, you know.
Mhm.
I think it works well there. It's a solid game, and it's fun to just have a greatest hits like highlight reel of that generation for sure.
Mm. And if you want to read Kyle's full review, you can do so on GameInformer.com.
That's right.
All right. So, Kyle, I also have been playing a game for review. I have not quite gotten to the point where I'm able to review it. I'm not cool like you. So, but I've been playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate.
Right. When you were introducing it, I was like, "What game is he talking about? What's the other Switch game?"
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
tell
this
me
was
about
an
this.
Apple Arcade exclusive for the longest time. I mean, for the longest time, I think it's been like a year and a half or 2 years. And it's basically the elevator pitch here is Hades, but TMNT.
Pretty good pitch.
So I am not the biggest Hades guy, right? Like I've played the original Hades. I put a few hours into it and then I just kind of fell off. I wasn't one of those people who just obsessed over it for, you know, hours upon hours, weeks upon weeks. When Hades 2 came out, I'm like, oh, I guess it came out in early access and we got it on our cover. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like I'm glad that exists. But I haven't even checked out Hades 2 yet, even though everybody's been talking up a storm about it on social media. I have really enjoyed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate, and the roguelite style lends itself really well, like the run-based format, and the fact that there's 4 distinct characters, all of them have different abilities. So like, you start off as Leonardo just for the tutorial, and like basically you go room by room, enemies spawn in, you take them out. It's just kind of like the isometric camera,
Mhm.
and you can do a basic attack. Every turtle has a distinct tool. So like Raph has like a hook that he can pull enemies close to him. Uh, Michelangelo can taunt, and Donatello can just like detonate a device that does damage, like an AoE effect to nearby enemies.
Mhm.
And then they also have a special attack that they all operate on cooldowns, and the cooldown actually charges not by time. Usually, it charges by you pulling off basic attacks. So like you actually have to be active. You can't just like camp in the corner and be like, all right, well, I'm going to wait for my tool to recharge. Some things like your dash, because like there's also like you can dash and like you can upgrade that to have more charges and everything. That operates on like a timer, but everything else you have to earn by pulling off basic attacks and landing them on enemies. So that's kind of a nice way to keep like that kinetic flow going. um you go room by room, and every time you beat a room you get an upgrade or some sort of like you get a menu basically where it's like choose what you want as your reward for this room. And some of them are like temporary boosts, like for the next 4 rooms your attack is going to be raised by 50%, or for the next 4 rooms like your critical hit chance will be raised by 10% or something like that. And it you can you can level those up higher, but 2, there's also like run wide upgrades as well. Like you can get a mastery, which will be like, all right, well, permanently for the rest of this run, your attack is 30% higher, which is always like a good one, right?
Mhm.
Or like you can add like 200 extra max health, which is I think you and I are of the same mind on this one, where it's like when we get a chance to upgrade your health, especially early on, that's one that you probably want to take.
Mm.
And then, as roguelites and roguelikes often do, there are permanent upgrades that you can unlock as well. So there are a few different currencies that you collect. One's dragon coins, one is dreamer coins. And dreamer coins like give you things like boosts to the economy. Like you get like these are permanent boosts, like, oh well, like the scrap, which is just like the currency that you use within the run itself, is increased by a set number amount from this particular enemy. So like Mousers will drop 30% more scrap, and bosses will drop 30% more scrap. You can upgrade that, or you can upgrade different like attack based, like very specific attack boosts. Dragon coins are kind of like abilities that you can upgrade permanently. And then there are artifacts that you can equip one artifact per or one artifact at a time. And there's some that like will give like certain elemental attacks boosts, and other ones will be like, oh well, this makes it so it's more likely that you get like this type of upgrade offered at the end of a room. So like if you really want to have like a certain type of upgrade when you beat a room, you just equip that and there's a chance that it'll do that. And I know that this is probably causing people to like get that feeling that you get when somebody's trying to explain like the rules of a card game,
Right.
where it's just like, oh my God, this is so much information. I know. Trust me. Like the currency thing, if you were listening to this and being like, oh my God, there's so many currencies, this is obviously like a microtransaction mess. It is not. There are no microtransactions that I've seen. This was
Well,
an Apple Arcade
it's an
game,
Apple Arcade game, right? I will
which
say though, some Apple Arcade games were clearly games that were like converted to not have microtransactions, and
mhm.
like they still have the remnants there. Like the Castlevania Apple Arcade game felt that way, where it was like the game was like clearly designed to be pushing me towards like microtransactions, but like it was clear that they just like shoved it in an Apple Arcade and like just changed that, like because there's like different currencies and stuff like that. This sounds like the same thing, which is like ultimately I'm that's good. Like I don't want microtransactions in here, but like I can't. It's still you can't. But when there's multiple currencies, you can't help but kind of feel like this was the idea at one point, right, guys?
Mhm.
You know?
So that stuff can be a little confusing, a little overwhelming. It's like, oh man, I wish that I had like more of this currency. How do I get that? And the answer is always just like, oh, go do another run. And like, I like the balance of like, you beat a room and then it gives you an option of like, oh, you can like upgrade a thing for the rest of this run. You can do a more powerful upgrade that only lasts for a few rooms, or you can like choose to like add to your savings balance of like here I can get 25 dragon coins for beating this room. That will go towards like my funds that will allow me to do permanent upgrades.
Mhm.
And as you unlock those permanent upgrades, it really is noticeable. So like you're constantly going through like the same progression of like, all right, the first you go through a mini boss that is somewhat randomized. Like there's like 3 mini bosses that they'll rotate early on. Obviously there will be more that unlock later.
So you
And
do have
then
to
there,
fight the same bosses over and over, Hades style, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So like I get to the first
Like
boss
that.
is like Leatherface,
Okay.
and I'm just like, and they even like make references to it where they're like Raph will be like, all right, let's get this over with.
It's always good
And
when the game is sharing your exasperated feelings alongside with you. Always a sign that you you made the right call.
my assumption, because again, I've not beaten a run yet. That's why I'm holding off on like delivering a final review
Right.
here. Is that eventually, I hope they will give me some sort of shortcut to get to other thing. I don't know. Like maybe there will, maybe there won't. Because Dead Cells does that eventually, right? Like they eventually give you
Uh,
some like ways to skip certain
it's
parts.
like alternate paths, right? And maybe I think you've played more Dead Cells than me. I don't really
Well, there are
remember.
like vines that you can unlock eventually
I
that will
yes.
let you climb up, and I think that lets you skip small sections of it. And
Yeah.
it is
It
nice that like the upgrades are. I mean, I think this is like the main reason that they do it this way is like when you go and attack Leatherface, or I'm sorry, Leatherhead, not Leatherface. Leatherface is the
please get it
Texas
right.
Chainsaw Massacre. Leatherhead. Let me make sure I'm getting that right.
Yeah, it's
That
Leatherhead,
is, yeah,
alligator guy,
Leatherhead.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, the alligator. He at first it was like, oh, this is a pretty challenging boss fight, and then like now it's like I just breeze through him because of all the upgrades I've unlocked. And same thing with like the second boss. It's like, oh my God, this first time I was like ramming my head up against the wall of this boss, and now I can get through her most of the time. And then it's on to like the really challenging stuff for me. But like eventually that's probably not going to be super challenging because I'll have so many upgrades that I can just like breeze through that the way I do the first 2 sections now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the genre, to be fair. I know I'm like it is an element of the genre I've never been a super huge fan of. And like I finished Hades. I beat Hades, and like I to even up to my final run, runs plural. I was still kind of annoyed that it's like I gotta fight Meg every time I run through here. It's why Undermine continues to this day be my favorite rogue, because like once you beat the boss, like you're done with that boss, which is nice.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a nice element. Like I'm never really a big fan of like backtracking in games.
mm.
and like roguelites and roguelikes kind of do that by design.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, it's like backtracking with an asterisk, right? It's like
Yeah.
forward tracking or something. It's like it's kind of different, but it's familiar. Yeah.
It
Um.
is interesting as like a kind of a throwback though, because like if you were playing Super Mario Brothers on NES, for example, and you ran out of lives, you got a game over, and then it's like, all right, I got to replay all the stuff that I did before to get back up to that point that I failed.
Yeah, which is
Um,
and why they don't really do lives anymore.
exactly.
It's not very fun. This has become a discussion about the genre, really. But which I have qualms with, but I do have rogues that I absolutely adore for sure. Like those games will get their hooks in me absolutely. I mean, does this one play well? Does it feel good? I mean, that's kind of the big thing, right? I
Yeah,
don't know.
it feels really great. I was playing it primarily in handheld mode because I was playing it while I was traveling.
Yeah.
But I did sit down and play it up on my TV for a few hours last night, and it does chug a little bit on the Switch in docked mode. And I was
Oh,
surprised by that because I feel like sometimes it's the other way around. But yeah, I mean, for this one in particular, the frame rate, maybe it's just more sensitive. My eyes are more sensitive to it because it's up on a big screen instead of in a handheld version.
yeah.
But like, I remember feeling really smooth in handheld mode. And then when I put it up on the big screen, I was like, oh, the frame rate seems a little bit lower than my eyes were perceiving it in handheld mode. But, it's not bad by any means. It's not like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet or something like that. But like, I don't know, just something to keep in mind that
Right.
if you have I mean, Apple Arcade, it ran on a phone, so you think it would be able to run on a Switch, but at this point, I think the iPhones are running things that Switch couldn't run, like Resident
Yeah.
Evil
I think
Village.
my phone I think is more powerful than my Switch. Yeah.
It's wild to think about. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure this will eventually come to other consoles if that is kind of like a deal breaker to you. And I bet it would run amazing on a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or even a Steam Deck for that matter if you want to have a portable version of it and you don't have Apple Arcade. But yeah, it plays really well. I like that like the turtles, despite like them having like different weapons and everything, like they all control a little bit different,
Mhm.
but they all kind of have that long like broadly reaching slash, not quite to the extent of like Kratos with like in the old school God of War, but like they kind of have like these swiping strikes, right? Like that you swing Leo's sword and it has a good range, and Michelangelo is like kind of acrobatic with his nunchucks, and Raph is a little bit faster and a little bit brooding, and like Donnie's a little bit slower, but he has really good range. So I like that
Classic
they
Donnie. That's
yeah.
always Donnie.
So it's nice. Like I like the attacks that they have, and like it feels really good to pull off a special attack like dodge. Basically, it's like all right, well they kind of broadcast where the enemies are going to be attacking, especially the bigger enemies. It's like all right, he's about to do an AOE attack. Here are the locations of like where the projectiles are going to land. So you just have to dodge out of that. And then once they like commit to the attack, you can pull off a special, and it always feels so good to land that. And then like watching the bar of like bosses that you've beaten several times, like Leatherhead, just like melt as you're attacking them is just so satisfying after like you remember like, oh, he beat me like the first 3 times I fought him. Um, and then like also those bosses evolve as you face them. So like sometimes I'll get to the second boss and it'll be like, oh, this is the one that throws all the projectiles. The first time I beat her, like that was what she was doing. The second time, it's like, oh, now she's like summoning fire and like it's like melting part of the platform as I'm trying to like stand on it. And that's kind of cool that like they do throw some variants in there at random. And there is by the way, like I mentioned scrap earlier as kind of like the in-run currency.
Mhm.
Every several rooms there will be a merchant that you can trade those in for like different things like either max health upgrades or like upgrades to like be like, oh well, like those temporary boosts now last 2 rooms longer, so instead of boosting your attack for 4 rooms it boosts it for 6 rooms. And it's always kind of that balance of all right, well, do I want to like try to really like make this a good run, or do I want to just basically use this as a run to farm the long-term upgrade currencies?
Right.
So I like that balancing act. But yeah, I'm having a great time with it. I don't want to say like what scores I'm thinking of at the moment because that can change on a dime. But I'm overall positive on this game. and I'm going to keep playing it. I'm really looking forward to getting to the end of one of these runs and writing a full review that you'll be able to read eventually on GameInformer.com. But there is co-op, both local and online. I've yet to check that out, but I'm hoping to at some time in the near future. But Kyle, does this sound like something you're going to check out?
Actually, yeah. I like Ninja Turtles a lot. I'm a fan of the brothers. And it feels like a good fit for that IP, right? And like I know Hades 2 is out there, but like, and I have played a little Hades 2 and it seems cool, but like I really want to wait till the game is done. And same
Same.
for like there was Prince of Persia, the Rogue
Mhm.
Prince of Persia is like I like what I've played of this, but like I would like for it to be done. So I am kind of in the mood for a Rogue right now, and I kind of want to try this one. I actually was like while you were talking, I was thinking of I played years ago. I reviewed it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants in Manhattan, which is like the platinum Ninja Turtles game, which
So much
to my
potential.
right to my memory kind of had a little bit of a rogue structure. I think because like I remember like the thing was like you had to replay the levels over and over, and I remember that game just like coming up short, and like not quite clicking. And I wonder if this would be kind of like, you know, taking some of those ideas and, you know, it's a different style of action game, but I wonder if it would function better. I do kind of want to try it. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I do recommend it, especially if you like the Hades style of gameplay. Like,
Hmm.
this is a very good one of those. And I know it was well liked when it was on Apple Arcade. So when like it's kind of like this and what's the other one? Sonic Dream Team, I think is the other one. And Hello Kitty Island Adventure. It's another one that like is coming to Switch. They announced that coming to Switch in 2025. I don't know why I said
Yeah.
it like that. But who says it 2025? They announced it's coming in 2025, and that's one that I'm actually looking forward to, even though I'm not a Hello Kitty fan. But
Yeah. No, my family, Animal Crossing fans, played it on Apple Arcade, and it was an obsession for a little while. So to have that on outside of Apple Arcade on Switch is very exciting. And if you like Animal Crossing, if you like those kinds of games, like absolutely check out that Hello Kitty game for sure.
but there are so many good games on Apple Arcade, and then I play them on my phone, and I'm like, I wish this was on console. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
so glad. This is like the prime example. I've been wanting to play this game for more than like just a second, which is what I did on my phone. And I know that you can get something like the Backbone
Yeah.
and like
Backbones are
play
nice.
with a controller.
Yeah.
Those were actually on sale, I noticed this week for Prime Day, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm tempted to do that," but I was like, "I don't know." Like,
I had one for my previous model, and I because well that I was also GameSpot's mobile.
mhm.
I don't remember my title at this point, but I was the mobile guy at GameSpot for a couple months there, so I had one and really liked it. But I've since gotten the new iPhone, so which has a USB-C port, so
Mhm.
it's no longer compatible.
I
it's a,
noticed that.
it's
Like,
it's a handy thing to have. It is nice.
yeah, I Victor Lucas, who I had on the show a few weeks ago, recommended. God, what was it called? It's like a really. I looked it up, and it's like an extremely
Kishi,
expensive one.
Razer
Yeah,
Kishi.
yeah, Razor Kishi.
Yeah, I think I have one over there because like when I was at GameSpot, like they would just send I would just get so many controllers. Like cuz like people would send, "Oh, GameSpot has a mobile dedicated guy, take our controller." So hey, next time I see you if you want to
I
raise
mean,
your keychain.
I have an Apple Arcade subscription that I barely ever use because I'm like, these games would be so much better on console, which is
Yeah.
the whole point I was making with this is like, this is a game that feels like it was tailor made for consoles because of how the gameplay is.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy it's finally freed from Apple Arcade, even though I'm sure like it's great on Apple Arcade if you have like one of those controllers.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was doing that for the Sonic game that I'm waiting to come to
Yeah.
consoles as
Well,
well. Like I
which by the
actually,
way, also to shout out the Apple TV, like you can play every Apple
yes.
Arcade game on there as well and just connect a PlayStation controller or Xbox controller that or whatever.
I
So
don't know if my Apple Arcade is compatible. Mine might be the last Apple Arcade that's not compatible, or I'm sorry, Apple TV that's not compatible with those
right.
games.
Right.
I don't know if it's powerful enough, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm
No.
just I've never tried it. But yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Splintered Fate. It's available now on Switch, and it's been on Apple Arcade for a long time. Keep your eyes on GameInformer.com for an upcoming review on that. But Kyle, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Do me a favor if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. If you want to get any questions or comments in, get in touch with me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com. Hit me up on social media at Brian P. Shea, or leave a comment on the free All Things Nintendo Patreon page. You can also find All Things Nintendo on YouTube and subscribe to that channel. Just search for All Things Nintendo or visit at Brian P. Shea on YouTube. Kyle, what do you have to plug?
I don't know. Social media is making me ill lately, but you can follow me over there if you want.
And you can always find Kyle on GameInformer.com.
There we go. That's a better plug. Yeah, I'm always writing stuff over there.
That is our show for this week. Thank you again so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time.